everybody! Welcome to another live stream pop-up via YouTube with the Grossman Files. Where we got the documents. Hope everyone's doing well out there. It's an SOS land. Well, I have enough batteries to get us through at least up to Vault Hill, where the 14-year-olds shot Karen Walstrom in 1964 or whatever it was. Ultimately, I kind of forgot all about the Karen Walstrom story a couple of years ago because it has nothing to do with Son of Sam. I mean, give me a break, guys. But recently, a couple of eyewitnesses to her body surfaced. Before I talk about their eyewitness testimony, I just want to preface this by saying that I have absolutely no problem with these two women. They seem like very nice women. They tried to get in touch with me several months ago. They emailed me about, we saw Karen Walstrom's body, we're the people who found it. And they were very nice, very earnest in their wanting to shed light on the story. But ultimately, they had nothing to offer me, which made me interested in any way, shape, or form. So they admit our conversation was very cordial, but I never bothered to follow up with them because Karen Walstrom doesn't have anything to do with Son of Sam. I'm a Son of Sam researcher. I'm not a researcher of fake stories about 14-year-old high school kids shooting people in Van Cortlandt Park, which is, of course, where we're coming from today. As we sort of pick up where we left off when my batteries died in our last meeting. So we're here in the Alfred Hunt Howell Grove, the most likely spiritually sick blue blood of the Dodge Foundation, whose progenitors in the 2000s talking about gender as a social construct. I mean, what does that even mean? Who comes up with this crap? So, but the two very nice ladies who were talking about Karen Walstrom, they recently resurfaced with the cretaginous, troglodytic, mouth-breathing moral reprobates and put together a show about Karen Walstrom, a hidden satanic victim, where these people are still talking in 2025 about Karen Walstrom was a victim of the Son of Sam cult. Well, first of all, there was no Son of Sam cult. So how could she have been a victim of something that doesn't exist? This is not possible. But these two very nice ladies were exploited in this production, this actually really sad production. And it was touted that their testimony was going to blow the wide open doors off this Karen Walstrom, because they found her body here in the woods of Van Cortlandt Park. Now, what's interesting is that when these two women were interviewed, one of them couldn't remember anything after finding her body. They asked her, well, what was she like? What was her body like? What condition was it in? What clothes was she wearing? And the lady's like, I can't remember, the lady said. So, absolutely useless testimony from this very nice woman who was exploited by the mouth breathers to pretend as if she has something to add to this. And then her sister talked about Karen looked like a wax figure. She was wearing a jacket that was buttoned up. There was no blood. I don't see how that's possible given that she shot herself with a .22 rifle. And let's just assume that that's true, that her jacket was buttoned up. They said that, I think they said there was no bullet hole. First of all, this was like more than 50 years ago. They were 11 years old. They were traumatized from finding some dead body. I think they were looking for bullet holes. But none of it made sense. What's interesting is that the same people who used these two women, exploited these two women's going up a big hill here. The same people who exploited these two women's virtually useless story took everything they said at face value to presume that Karen was murdered. But meanwhile, these same people discount Wendy Savino, who was 39 years old at the time of her shooting and saw and positively identified David Berkowitz. But Wendy's testimony means nothing. Could never be true. But two 11-year-old girls who are now in their 70s talking in 2025 about something that one of them doesn't even remember. And then the other one, useless testimony. Somehow or other, it proves that Karen was a forgotten satanic victim. As we walk in the woods of Van Cortlandt Park, coming to the crest of the hill as we walk towards Vault Hill, where Karen Walstrom's body, where Maury Terry said she was shot by the 14-year-olds, all of whom kept the secret for like 70 years. Nobody ever talked. So we're gonna riff on that a little while as we walk towards Vault Hill. Say hello to those in the chat. What's going on, Ray J? Ricardo, happy Halloween. Message is held for review. The camera quality is so bad. Why? Because I'm using my phone camera. I'm not using my normal equipment, which is on a boat in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean on its way back from Puerto Rico. So I'm kind of actually liking this low quality. My attitude is, if you're not into it or if it's making you nauseous, you don't have to watch. It's totally cool. But I'm liking this whole feature of being able to go out to the woods with my camera and go on a live stream. It just makes it kind of fun for me. It brings a little bit new excitement to these very old topics. So of course I was the first person who even talked about Karen Walstrom in the modern era. It's only because of me that people even know her name. And when I first brought her up, I was walking these same pathways, and I was a big Maury Terry fan. And my first video, which you might be able to actually see it online. I might have done a reaction video to that live stream, and it's up. I was talking all about the 14-year-old killers who met her at the Van Cortlandt Motel. And I was talking about Brother John's map and how Brother John said that he witnessed her getting shot in Vault Hill and that she was killed because she knew something about the cult and she was going to talk and all this stuff. So, of course, in the ensuing years, we have learned a hell of a lot more about not only about Brother John and the fact that he was an absolute lowest level, bottom of the barrel, druggy, alcoholic, liar that you could possibly ever imagine. Guy was everywhere. He was at Stonewall. He was with Jeffrey Dahmer. The dude was the Zelig, as Iron Diva says, the Zelig of true crime. But he also happened to be, Vault Hill is down here. Let's go this way. He also happened to be in the woods of Van Cortlandt when Karen Walstrom was murdered, just conveniently giving Maury Terry another push in the 1990s, that critical 1993 to 1997 period when Maury Terry was coming out with his second book, needed more hoosah to throw at you to get people to buy into his crap. Berkowitz was essentially telling him he was full of crap at this point. If you read their correspondence together, which I've done multiple videos on. And then he was getting characters like Billy the Artist, who were literally giving him Marvel comic book characters and saying that he's met these people at Untermeyer Park. And then you have it documented on freaking film with him showing those pictures to Berkowitz. And Berkowitz saying, yeah, it was Ken. That was Maria. This was Moloch. It's ridiculous shit, man. What's going on, Rodney? What is Billy the Artist going to be for Halloween? I don't know. I haven't spoken to good old Billy in a while. So I figured we'd come out here on Halloween and talk about Karen Walstrom in the spooky woods of Van Cortlandt Park, where allegedly all this cultic activity took. Well, listen, nobody in the old days wanted cultic activity in Van Cortlandt Park to be true more than me. But you can't make something up when it doesn't exist, when no objective proof for it exists. Karen Walstrom was, unfortunately, her tragic story was another one of these stories that Maury glommed onto, completely made up a new backstory, got a person to throw out the hoose out and make it fit, and then sold it to you as the backstory of the Son of Sam cult. It was the early progenitors of the cult in Yonkers and Sacred Heart who lured her here to Vault Hill and then shot her because she knew that there was what was going on. Well, first of all, why would Karen Walstrom be hanging out with 14-year-olds in Vault Hill and taking place in occultic rituals? Like, that makes no sense objectively. And also, why don't the people who talk about her death ever mention that she was hospitalized in a psychiatric institution for previous suicide attempts? Don't you think that that's knowledge that people should know about in order to make an informed decision about what happened to Karen Walstrom? She was given an autopsy, was deemed a suicide. Oh, the autopsy people were corrupt. Why would they be corrupt? What? As Lorenzo said so presciently, what's their motivation to lie? So now the medical examiner is hooked up with 14-year-old killers from Sacred Heart in order to change an autopsy. 14-year-olds have the juice to change a medical examiner from New York City's autopsy report, just so Maury Terry could have a story in 1997 and Brother John could come out and get whatever goodies he got. Like, it just doesn't make sense on its face. This was where the ritual was. And I actually used to peddle this horse shit to you guys, not knowing any better. Again, no one would know her name if it wasn't for me. I did all the OG work on Karen Walstrom. I was through with it before y'all knew what to do with it. And it just, you know, back then when I wanted to believe in this crap, I believed in it wholeheartedly. But I was like, what's his face in the X-Files? Scully and Mulder. I was like Mulder. I just wanted to believe. That's all I wanted. I wanted to believe. And once we got the evidence, it just didn't make sense. So let's see. Found myself rewatching the Billy videos. He's such a character. I love Billy the Artist. Yeah, his stuff is classic, Ricardo. The the material from his basement where he first brings out the comic book characters was great, and then of course bringing him back to Untermeyer Park, scene of the crime, was fantastic. Where he lays it all out. He made up the name Ken. He made it all up, and then Maury Terry just said, "Yeah, there's a guy named Ken in the process, so it all fits." As if Ken isn't a common name. Hi, Manny. I found your channel from Bread of New York Crime Spot. Ryan Brown says, I love your content. Hey, Ryan. Thanks a lot, man. I really appreciate that nice comment. It makes me feel good. Welcome aboard, Ryan. Ricardo says, Conan. Yeah, I mean, that's what it's all about. So these two poor women who, you know, were very nice, being exploited by the mouth-breathing troglodytic cretinous moral reprobates to somehow manipulate into that Karen Walstrom was murdered. And then it's all again backed up strictly by the word of Brother John, the mentally ill, pathological liar. I mean, if that's who you're basing, so let's make a list of who the Maury Terry fan. Because again, I'm not trying to convince anybody that Maury Terry was a liar. We're done with that. I no longer argue the fact anymore with these people. I just assume it's true that he was a liar, and now I just analyze the lies. Why? Well, because I have this weird fascination with that, and also I have nothing else to do right now, and also quite frankly, it's fun to make comedy out of it. It gives me a foil to come out here and do little comedy routines. Oh, there goes Daniel Carlton Gajdusek. I see Gajdusek in the woods. Yeah, it's hilarious. People go, okay, Maury Terry might have been lying, but there's no doubt that Gajdusek was in the woods, the spiritually sick Nobel Prize winner. He was in the woods of Untermeyer Park. How do you know this? How do you know that Gajdusek was in the woods of Untermeyer Park? You don't have any physical proof of this. Again, it's your table leg. You want it to be true because it props up your worldview that the world is run by satanic elitist pedophiles, all sacrificing children. Now, I don't know why in hell you're constantly filling your minds up with the thoughts of child sacrifice and child pornography and all these sick and demented things. Like, why are you thinking about these things constantly? It's absolutely ridiculous. What's up, Derek of the world? Rodney, yeah, Ken talk like this. When Billy said that for us, I was dying laughing. What's up, Chris Banks, Ray J? So, yeah, so we're out here talking about these two poor women exploited by the mouth-breathing troglodytics whose story or lack thereof. I mean, they were 11 years old. One of them doesn't remember anything that they saw, and the other's testimony is absolutely useless because she didn't see anything. She says, "Oh yeah, it was a wax dummy. It looked like a wax dummy. I didn't see any blood." Okay, so you're going to take these people's word as gospel from a 50-year-old remembrance from an 11-year-old, but somehow or other Wendy's story as a 39-year-old shooting victim of Berkowitz is completely discounted. Her eyewitness testimony, the victim who's living and whose sketch matches Berkowitz to a T, somehow or other, she's not credible. So it's not honest research that these troglodytes are doing, and so I'm allowed to comment on it. I'm not going to bring up names. These people know who they are. They're probably watching right now. They're obsessed with me. And unlike them, I actually watch their stuff. Well, first of all, I find a lot of entertainment value in watching these people. Again, I'm not going to name them and give their work any daylight. If you want to find out who they are, it's probably pretty easy to find out who they are. These people are absolutely nuts. And but I'm allowed to comment on it, and at least I watch all their work. It's called, opposition research. I actually watch everything they do and read what they write, so I could basically use it as comedy fodder for these live streams. But these people are sitting here talking about, oh yeah, Howell was killed the same day, 30 years later, so it's connected in the occult somehow. Okay, if you want to believe that's fine. Oh, two 11-year-old girls one of whom doesn't remember anything, and the other maybe remembers something about her looking like a wax dummy and not remembering seeing any blood. Well, there had to have been blood. She shot herself in the chest with a .22 rifle. A fatal wound shot into your chest cavity would have hit a major artery. There was going to be blood at that site. Oh, her jacket was closed when we found her. Well, maybe some sick person found her before you and closed up her jacket. That's actually a possibility that could have happened in the real world as presently constituted. There's absolutely no proof. If you go to look at Maury Terry's notes, he spends like 10 pages on his high school class. Jimmy O'Toole, Gamitter. He had brother John confirming his information. So it's like the blind leading the liar leading the blind who wants to be lied to in order just to get a book out to sell a story. I saw your video on the DeFeo murders, the mob hitman he was blamed was Louis Fellini. He was interviewed and had a rock solid alibi. All right, cool, Ryan. Well, thanks. Welcome again to the channel here. That video I did with New York City Crime Spot has been seen a lot of times, and it's the only video on YouTube where we actually went up into the private property of the house. We showed you the spot where they had the infamous barbecue and whatnot. And there were people living in the freaking house at that moment. One of them was seen from the window. After the cameras went off, we went back and we talked to the lady who lives in it now. And we asked if we could go inside and if we could videotape it. But she was nice, but she wasn't having it. She wasn't having it at all. So we're here at Vault Hill, the scene of Karen Walstrom's murder. So, yeah, I mean, what's so hard to believe that a woman in 1964 was depressed and killed herself? Now, it's unusual for a female to kill herself in a violent way such as that. But it's not unheard of. And she had had a previous suicide attempt before. And, oh, wait, I think I see. It's Gaj Dusek. He's there with Ken and Maria. Ken is being treated poorly by Maria. Oh, wait, no. Maria is being treated poorly by Ken. And all the while, weak cars in the back screaming out, motherfucker. That's another thing. I mean, this yellow VW is the most ridiculous red herring and stupidity. Of course, the cops were going to look at the yellow VW strongly. It was seen driving away from the scene of the crime not long after. It's absolutely ridiculous. We also know that they looked at Berkowitz's Ford Galaxy very strongly once they found the parking ticket. What does it mean that they looked at a yellow VW? Do you know how many cars they looked at the Brooklyn scene? At least 10 they looked at. It's just that Maury focused in on the yellow VW, so he got his troglodytic followers in the ensuing years to obsess over the VW so much that everybody was seeing VWs everywhere. Even Nan Cassara was seeing a VW and remembering that Berkowitz had a VW. And now everyone's talking about, oh, Wheat Car had a VW. She did? How do you know that? There's no record of Wheat Car ever owning a yellow VW. And even if she did, it wouldn't mean a GD thing. Look up, man. Batman. Yeah, there's the bat signal. So Vault Hill here is where Brother John drew his elevation map. Remember, guys who have been with me since day one, April 2021, I was out here all earnest talking about the murder of Karen Walstrom was satanic. Guys, I was through with it before you all knew what to do with it. Once you realize the cast of characters Maury Terry used in order to, quote, prove, unquote, his, quote, cult theory of Son of Sam, it just all falls to shambles. Oh, there's God's Dusek! So, yeah, really kind of cool in here today. I love this day of All Hallows Eve. In terms of the atmosphere, I mean, I'm not happy to be back in New York. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that. I was just starting to get used to Puerto Rico, like literally 3 days before I left. And I have to say, one of the things that really made me settle in that feeling in Puerto Rico was hanging out with one of you guys, Maria, one of our fans going back to 2021. I met her down there for the first time after years of emailing and reading her comments. And we had such a great day planting trees that when I got home that day, I was like, damn, I don't want to leave. But again, like I said, we're not going to talk about my personal life in any way, shape, or form anymore. But I got a great opportunity here, and so I had to follow that path, at least for the time being. But it brought us back together, and renewed my interest in. There was a part of me that was missing the atmosphere here, this dark and spooky atmosphere of the woods up here in the Hudson Valley, lower Hudson Valley region, here in Van Cortlandt Park. Is that I think that's I'm not sure. That's the stone that I first did my first Karen Walstrom video on. It might be. I don't remember at this point. I think it might have been. Maybe it was up there. Who knows? But yo, crime spots here. Have you seen any druidistic activity while you've been out today? No. I have not seen any satanistic or druidistic activity. I mean, can you believe this guy, Maury Terry, was so obsessed that he was constantly talking about druidism? And then you have mouth-breathing, troglodytic, moral reprobatinous cretins today talking about there was a couple from Irvington that was into druidism. And in 1950, they were in Untermeyer Park. I spoke to the same eyewitness to that. I mean, that might have been true. I mean, druids are allowed to hang out wherever they want. And if they wanted to go into Untermeyer, well, I can understand it. It's kind of a creepy, eerie place that a druid would like. But I always ask the question, what's that got to do with say? And the answer usually is absolutely nothing. Have you ever done any videos on the Cropsey case? Brian Brown asks. No, not my thing. Josh Zeman did it already. I don't take anyone's sloppy seconds. I forge my own path. Zeman did his Cropsey thing, and that's going to have to be the last word as far as I'm concerned. I have no interest in it. Again, I only got into Sam because it was local. And it fascinated me because it was a local story. But Cropsey's from Staten Island, and it was, the urban myth from Staten Island. And of course, people still misunderstand Zeman's Sons of Sam documentary. They use it as proof that Berkowitz had help. It's anything but that. It shows Maury Terry to be an absolute buffoon of the highest order, a total blowhard liar who even his own wife thought he was insane. God, how I wish Maury was still alive, how we could confront him with all this evidence to his face just to see what he would say. Imagine how fun that would be. But then again, we wouldn't have seen it if he was alive because he gate-kept it. No wonder he hid all his shit, sending his minions like Carl Denaro out on riddle-finding missions. Oh, let's give them a riddle to solve. And these freaking people took it. Thank you, sir. May I have another? Can you believe how little self-respect you have to have to yourself if you're hanging out with Maury Terry and he's giving you riddles to solve that may give you a clue that ultimately is bullshit anyway? Once we have all his files. It's absolutely ridiculous. Oh, Maury, what do you think about the Blue Oyster Cult? Back of the cover of their album, it shows a church in Salem, New York. I mean, so? Oh, the gematria. There's the number 13 all over Son of Sam, even if that's true. So, I could find the number 13 anywhere I look if I wanted to. We deal here, of course, for those of you who are new, who maybe have seen us since the new Son of Sam documentary came out. I'll talk a little bit about that Son of Sam documentary. I'm saving the backstory and all the behind-the-scenes stuff for when I actually get my real equipment. actual druids are harmless. Yeah, I mean, I'll take your word for it. RPB, who I think is the old lord from the old days. I'll take your word for that because I got no I got no interest in any of that stuff. As soon as I realized Maury Terry lied to us by analyzing the documents, mainly the police reports and Berkowitz's confession, then that was it for me. I was done. Couldn't have cared less about process after that, or Satanistic, or druidistic activities taking place here deep in the woods of the park. Now, did shit occur here in the middle of the night? Yeah, of course. These woods actually lend themselves to the dark arts, I believe. They're eerie and spooky. I could even believe people if they say they're haunted and all that kind of stuff. But again, I need proof. You know, I'm a person who works on objective facts. And when Berkowitz talks about, I only used one hand to shoot Carl Denaro, and that's, boy, was it wild. And then Carl, for 40 years, is constantly saying, the shooting was so wild, it had to be a woman. And then he doesn't go the next step and just accept the fact that David Berkowitz told you in 1979 that he used one hand. He said it to the people in his confession. Carl, why didn't your boy Maury Terry tell you that? He had the documents. He was sitting around telling you to look at this song title and connect it to that song title and a do and a d and whatever the hell else you wanted to throw in there. And you're sitting there going, yes, Maury, give us more riddles and puzzles. And then in 2025, Carl's sitting here begging Berkowitz to tell him the truth. And Berkowitz is laughing his ass off because he's still victimizing these people. That's what you don't understand. Son of Sam is occurring to this day. You absolute troglodytes. Berkowitz shot Sam Carr's dog. Correct. Did the dog die? Yes, he shot the dog with a .45 caliber semi-automatic machine gun type of a weapon, and the dog did not die. Harvey the blood monster lived on after that to constantly torment him. So yeah, I feel bad for these two old ladies who found Karen's body here in the park as children. It must have been very traumatic. Once I vetted them, I realized that they had nothing to give me that was gonna do anything to further the story. I was very polite, but I didn't communicate with them after that. And then these poor women were taken in by the troglodytic mouth breathers and propped up to give their bullshit Karen was murdered story a little bit of credibility. It's really sad to see, but it was entertaining to watch because these people who are touted as experts, one said, I don't remember anything, and the other remembered things that weren't suspicious and could have very mundane explanations at the end of the day. So whatever. I mean, look, I don't sit here and argue with these people anymore. I'm sitting here just making comedy. I'm trying to entertain myself first and foremost in today's crazy world. And I'm hoping to entertain you guys a little bit in this crazy world. I'm hoping that the comedy comes through. But I'm not sitting here trying to convince the troglodytes that they're wrong. I know they're wrong. I don't have to convince them of it, and they're not capable of being convinced. But I'm able to, at least because I watch all their stuff and read all their ridiculous blogs, I'm actually able to speak about it with some authority. And I just find it sad that they take these two old ladies who don't really remember anything and who have no evidentiary value whatsoever about anything. They didn't see a cult, they didn't hear of occultic activity, none of that. And then they prop these two women up as the find of the century. We're gonna get Manny. See, Manny didn't want these people on his show. He wanted to cover up their story. No, they didn't have any story. But then, of course, these same people say that Wendy Savino's eyewitness testimony from 1977, backed up by a description that's exactly like every other Berkowitz description in the Son of Sam crimes, and also backed up by a sketch that is the spitting image of David Berkowitz, that has no value whatsoever to these same people. So it's just hypocrisy, and I'm allowed to point it out. Robert Mapplethorpe and Roy Cohen sacrificed children to Conan the Barbarian. Hey, look, New York City crime spot, my man. This guy Jusek hanging out with Roy Cohn. And Robert Mapplethorpe is taking pictures with Ron Sisman in a van that never existed. Can you imagine how sick you have to be in 2025 to still have faith in the liar, the manipulator, the bullier, the abuser, the drunkard, the wig wearer, the chain smoker, the not good friend, the man who would send you 1,500 feet this way when it really meant 1,500 feet that way, and the man whose mind was drenched in urine. And of course, we're talking about Maury Terry here. Getting my sea legs back on the old sayings. I know I said I wasn't going to do much, but finding myself a little bit of time. And the opportunity is just too good to pass up. So, hope everyone's doing well. Entertainment would be a landscape view. With respect, New York City, that's insane. Yo, Lord, Crime Spot is just making a joke. Captain Slappy, yay, it's Manny. Good to see you out and about. Got a jet, but happy Halloween, everyone. Chris Banks, the dog did die, but not from that shot. No, Ray J, it was the 45 that he shot the dog with. He shot the Netto dog with a 22. Hunley's sidekick, Chris Banks, Druidistic Activity, who exactly you're referencing? Just looking at the old things here in the chat. I haven't heard the Manny rant. Well, I've been taken to the woodshed by people who actually care about me, people in my family, and other people who say, Manny, you gotta stop. It's not a good look. Talking about these people and making fun of them. Anybody who wants to work with you or possibly hire you, they're going to take one look at this and they're going to be turned off. Well, that turned out not to be true. Again, I'm not going to say what I'm doing now. I have crazy haters who spend their entire lives obsessed with me and trying to get me doxxed and fired from everything that I do. Hello. And so I'm not going to say, what I'm doing now, professional, but I got the opportunity of a lifetime with all these videos out. So, it wasn't a problem. Oh, but Netflix. Yeah. What was I going to talk? I was starting to talk about Netflix a little bit. What was I saying? Oh, I forgot. But Netflix was an amazing opportunity. Oh, I just wanted to talk briefly about Netflix, about what it is and what it wasn't. Because the people who were insanely jealous and completely apoplectic that I was in that documentary, it absolutely ate them to their core like acid eats through steel. They kid themselves into going, oh, nobody watched it, and it didn't move the needle on anything, and it didn't have anything new in it. Well, first of all, millions of people watched it. Second, it didn't really move a needle because that wasn't the point of it. It wasn't a needle mover. And nothing in media now is a needle mover. There's so much content that comes out every day on so many sources that nothing's a needle mover anymore. And number three, it wasn't meant to be for experts. That documentary was made for the layman who was interested in what Son of Sam was all about. And for that, it was perfect. It ran through everything from his childhood to Wendy Savino. It couldn't have been a more perfect documentary for what it was, which again was just for the layman to learn about the case. if you're a person who knows this case, and there are people who hate my guts, but who still think Berkowitz acted alone, and they know a thing or two about the case, I can't take that away from them. This documentary was not made for them. It wasn't meant to be a needle mover. And as far as Wendy's concerned, you can believe her or not. It makes no freaking difference to me. People go, oh, well, he's not confident in his findings about Wendy. Otherwise, he wouldn't talk about it so much. First of all, I'm allowed to talk about it whenever the hell I want. And second of all, I'm very confident in my findings about Wendy. I was confident in them from day one because I was working with real law enforcement on this. I wasn't like Maury, who was sitting around talking to Charles Hamilton, the drunkard handwriting expert, and Brother John and Billy the artist. So I had plenty of confidence in the story. I enjoy talking about which is going to go down as one of my greatest contributions to true crime history. A new canonical victim of a famous serial killer. Who else has done that? Very few people. And so I'm very proud of it, and I'm allowed to talk about it. And I'm allowed to talk about the critics of it, who still don't quite understand the devastating simplicity of the Wendy Savino story. Comply or be gone. My sister watched the documentary and she liked it. She hadn't seen any previous SOS documentaries. Yeah, exactly, Dave. It was made for your sister. People who didn't know the case, didn't particularly care about the case, but were willing to sit around for 3 hours and learn something new about a famous case. That's what it was. So, and in that regard, I thought it was brilliantly done. And our contributions to it were huge. Not only a lot of the research, but a lot of the guests were people who were in my camp, who never would have appeared in that if it wasn't for me calling them and saying, will you appear in this? And Gloria Khalili, for instance, was a breakout star in that production. And she came from our camp. I was a little sad that Vinny Minutolo didn't get the time that he deserved. And I believe they even talked to the Neto family as well. They even got them on tape. They were, but don't quote me on that. But they weren't used. Again, they pared the story down to the bone in Netflix. They weren't going to go into the Wicker Street crimes. They interviewed Ed Snedeker's son, who was the one who has that footage from the wedding. He was interviewed. He didn't show up in the documentary. And honestly, people tried to get me taken out of that documentary. You had the lunatic nutcase Chris Claw, her sidekick, the butt boy rocker, office rocker Mike, the absolute lying troglodytic moral reprobate who buys views like crazy and then pretends that somehow he made me famous. Neo, yes, the one. They all actually spent their time emailing Joe Berlinger to tell them that I was not fit to be put in that. And I think I trust Berlinger's, the guy who's been up for Academy Awards and who said that I was the soundbite machine and who interviewed me for 3 days. I think I take his word on who's fit to be in the documentary more than those three that I mentioned. And we had discussions about these calls that he was getting, and these people might have been thinking that they were penetrating and getting me out, but in reality, they just made themselves look horrendous. It was actually quite embarrassing the way that they were, that they ended up being seen. So it's really sad that they tried to do that. It had no effect on anything whatsoever. But that's why I'm much more careful now about talking about my personal life, because I just don't need the hassles. My downstairs neighbor are screaming at each other, and I was ballasting Steve by to counteract. The voice of reason is always a reminder of reality. Unreal the hate these people have. It's jealousy, really. jealousy makes people do a lot of very crazy things out there. And I understand if the shoes were on the other foot, I would probably be jealous too, because, you know, these things we are, as I was talking about at the end of my last live stream on in the woods here, there's an element of ego with this. Of course there is, especially if you're like me and you're a performer and you want to do things to the highest level possible. You're always in competition with people. I've never made I've never had any illusions otherwise. Yeah, I want to bring you guys the best content, but I also want to be the top guy in the game. And of course we are, and we can never be taken off that mantle. Even if the moral reprobates get two old ladies who saw Karen Walstrom's body here in these woods where I'm sitting, and they saw something that, you know, can't be verified 70 years later, or however long ago it was, 65 years later, and which means nothing to the Son of Sam case. Even if Karen Walstrom was murdered, let's just assume that she was murdered, you still can't connect it to the 14-year-olds that Maury Terry said did it. Just because he writes something on a piece of paper that 14-year-olds had something to do with Karen Walstrom's murder, it's not evidentiary proof that would stand up in a court of law. So it's like, how far do you want to go with this Karen Walstrom thing? I mean, it's kind of embarrassing, actually. And then to trudge these two poor old ladies up and then act as if their testimony means anything, it doesn't. Because first you have to establish that her murder was committed by the satanistic and druidistic alleged so-called, quote, Son of Sam cult, unalleged, unsocalled, unquote, that Maury Terry said it was. You have to prove that first. You have to prove that there was actually indeed that entity that was known as the Children and the 22 Disciples of Hell. And there's just no evidence, guys. I don't know what you want me to what you want me to say. I would have loved for that to be there, to be evidence to that effect, because I came in this as the ultimate Maury Terry fan. The ultimate evil was my jam, just like all of you guys who've been with me from the start. We went through that journey of discovery in the first 2 years until we got the police documents. Certain people say, oh, it was the apartment letters that were so important. Yeah, the apartment letters that were important, but they weren't the end-all be-all. It was the police documents that really made the difference. The apartment letters just proved that Berkowitz wrote the Son of Sam letters. Whoop-de-doo. Ultimately, who cares? Because it was the police documents that proved that he acted alone. And if you prove that he acted alone, then ergo, he wrote the Son of Sam letters alone. So you didn't even really need the apartment letters. And the apartment letter story is a backstory in and of itself. Briefly, the person who got him, who touts himself as my master and I'm his apprentice, and that I steal everything that I've done from him, even though I did shows that he's doing now. I did them 3 years ago with the same analysis, not knowing that he was working on any of this stuff, not even really thinking about him. We're talking about little Neo, poor guy. It's really sad what happened to that guy, really. I mean, I brought him up into this game, and he piggybacked off the popularity of the work that we were doing, that my video series, and that's the only reason anyone took him seriously. And the lies in his book about me are ridiculous. He said I was scared to go into the Netto attic when it was really my idea. He says that I got fired from NYBG because I was complaining about the lawn mowing at NYBG because he spoke to somebody there. Okay. So if he's willing to lie to you that badly, then anything that he says is immediately suspect. But he got those apartment letters. Okay, whoop-de-doo. You know, he did one thing. He got apartment letters, which ended up not being all that important to the grand scheme of things. And they would have come out in the People vs. David Berkowitz anyway, just like all of my Maury Terry files. But now he's going to have a reaction video to this. Watch, it's going to be hilarious. But he actually didn't share those apartment files. He was holding them back. And we were all having a meeting behind the scenes on Zoom, and there was a guy named Bob Matry who had gotten them from a detective that Neo gave them to. And he was the one that gave them out. And when Neo found that out, he went apoplectic. In fact, he threatened to kill a retired Yonkers detective, Bob Maitre. He told me, I'm going to kill that guy. And of course, I told Bob Maitre right away that Neo threatened his life. I didn't really take it seriously, but I put it on record with Maitre, and who's been in my videos, we're friends to this day. And it was because of Bob Maitre that people got those letters. I truly believe that they never would have been distributed to people by Neo had Bob Maitre not done it first. So, and then he talked about seeing the Cassara sun and talking to the guy at Candlelight. I don't know if any of that's true at this point, because I wasn't there. And if he's willing to lie about the reason I was fired from NYBG and that I was scared to go in the Netto attic when I have it on video showing how excited I was, then there's no depth that guy will stoop to in terms of bullshitting you. So, Ray J says, not just SOS, it's a grounding in reality. Never has there been a time when reality needs reinforced, I believe. Lord was the supporter of Maury Terry. I loved it. Dave Moss, I love the documentary. Thought the archival footage was great. Just wish it was longer. Yeah, I agree. Made for a general audience, not for all of us super into the case who'd want 10 plus episodes. Yeah, exactly. You have to know who your audience is. And you know what? I trust Joe Berlinger, the Academy Award nominated director, to make up those rules than the people who called them up trying to get me taken out of the production. So anyway, listen, I don't want to run out of batteries again. And said what I needed to say on Karen Walstrom. Probably shouldn't have gone into the stuff about the mouth breathing, troglodytes, Neo, who's like, I'm flabbergasted at the bullshit that he's telling not only his audience but himself. It's actually rather sick. But there's nothing I can do. I actually called into his show. He was having a live stream. I was in Puerto Rico and I called in to try to talk. And within 10 seconds, I was called a liar, a bullshitter. I stole all his work, and he wouldn't let me get a word in edgewise. So I took myself out of the stream. And of course, anybody who goes to watch it, you'll give him the most views that he'll ever get in this game. I think he's up to 60 subscribers. Congratulations, guys. I should actually have a rule that you have to have at least 75 subscribers for me to pay attention to you. But, these people are relentless, and I'm a human being, and every now and then it gets to me. But the people who've been there, who know the truth and who know the behind-the-scenes stuff, I still speak to them. Not going to talk about names or give names, but everybody knows what actually occurred behind the scenes in those golden years of 2021, 2022. And quite frankly, you all know me. I just generally try to stick to the case because I don't presume that you care about the drama and the backstory about any of this stuff. I could spend weeks talking about it, but I don't, because it doesn't ultimately mean anything to me other than to every now and then get it off my chest with these things. And that's really all I have to say. So I don't want to go too much longer with any of this. I don't want to run out of batteries on all y'all people of the so-called world. So listen, I'm going to be doing a lot of things. You know what? I'm not going to make any announcements about how quickly or how soon I'll be back. But for now, while I have only the phone and not my stabilized camera with the good gimbal and the GoPro, so I can give you the professional stuff that you're all used to, we're just going to have to deal with me popping on live unexpectedly. I'm not going to schedule anything anymore. I want these to be pleasant surprises. They're probably going to start slowing down soon because I'm getting very, very busy in the next week or so with other commitments. And but I'm having a great time talking about the case that I'm really into. It's, again, a hobby of mine. I'm allowed to have this hobby of true crime. And, I feel like you guys are here with me and we're having a good time together and we're getting a chuckle in the midst of all this crazy madness that's going on in the world. All right, guys, so we will see you at the next live pop-up, whenever that time shall be. Take care, guys. See you soon.